And welcome back. As we said, on his first day in office, President Trump began cracking down on immigration, both in his rhetoric and in his executive actions. That includes ordering the U.S. military to come up with a plan to seal the border.
I will send troops to the southern border to repel the disastrous invasion of our country. Under the orders I signed today, we will also be designating the cartels as foreign terrorist organizations.
President Trump, if cartels are now going to be seen as foreign terror organizations, would you think about ordering U.S. Special Forces into Mexico to take them out?
Could happen. Stranger things have happened.
Joining me now is NBC's Courtney Kube at the Pentagon. Also with me, Jay Johnson, Homeland Security Secretary in the Obama administration. Courtney, let me ask you here, as we heard so much about the use potentially of the military, the president says that he would use the military to repel an invasion. What's your understanding of what that might look like and what sort of limitations there might be on U.S. troops when they're deployed domestically?
Yeah, so there already are U.S. troops at the border. Remember, there's about 7,000 right now. It's about 2,500 who are under Title X status. Basically, what that means is they are federally activated. So they're not necessarily all active duty. They could be guard or reserve, but they are on federal active duty orders. There's also another 4,500 or so who are actually National Guard troops. And there's a big distinction there, Aaron. Why that is exactly what you asked about, what they can and cannot do. So if you are a federally activated soldier, member of the U.S. military, a service member, you cannot engage in law enforcement activities in the United States domestically. It is against something called the Posse Comitatus Act, and it comes up every so often. You know, viewers might look at that or might listen to that and think, Posse Comitatus, what is that? But it actually does come up very relatively often. We think about things like riots, protests. The U.S. military, active duty, cannot be brought in a law enforcement capacity. What they can do is support law enforcement, though, with as long as it's not directly related to a law enforcement activity. National Guard is a little bit different. The big question here, though, Aaron, is how many, if any, more U.S. military will President Trump decide he wants to send there to repel, as he said, this invasion? And what exactly would they be used to do that? We still don't know the answers to that. There's an executive order that came out that talked about some things that the U.S. military could do, like building barracks and some construction and engineering and things, but we still don't exactly know how many more troops or exactly what they could be doing.
So there's also this part of the order that tells U.S. Northcom to work on plans to seal the southern border, right? Is it clear if those plans are already being worked on and who exactly might be doing it?
Yeah, I mean, look, the executive order went out. Northcom, I imagine, jumped right on that. But we've asked the question and we don't have an answer yet whether, in fact, they have begun that. But it's also what we're trying to figure out is exactly what that would mean, sealing the border. And again, while there are U.S. military troops that are down there, it would theoretically, if they're talking about sealing the border with U.S. military, that could be, we're talking thousands more U.S. military troops who would have to be involved in that, even if it is in supporting law enforcement for it. But again, Aaron, there are so many questions. These executive orders came out pretty quickly last night, and we don't have a lot of answers still to this, even right now.
I do want to get your thoughts, though, about sort of broader implications on using the U.S. military to enforce border security, manpower issues. I mean, does the Pentagon have enough people to sort of move to this type of mission versus what we would typically think of as military missions?
Yeah, I mean, the military could put people down there if they wanted to, even right now when there are a lot of engagements overseas. Now, here's the thing. Recruiting has been a problem for the past several years. It has ticked up more in 2024, and even it's early in 2025. But recruiting has been a problem for several years now. And the reality is, historically, it usually will take years to recover from recruiting deficits. That being said, if there was a need for troops to go to the border, whether they be active duty or National Guard, the military has enough to send there, but it would be at the detriment to other potential missions. So whether they be overseas missions, support missions, whatever it is, if we're talking National Guard troops from other states, they actually have things they have to do in their home states. So it would potentially pull away from other things. You know, one other thing that I just found fascinating that we've also been trying to get to the bottom here is the cartels. You mentioned, now that they have been designated a foreign terror organization, could they be used to go across the border? that's another thing we've been asking. President Donald Trump last night left that window open, Aaron.
All right, Courtney Kube for us at the Pentagon today. Courtney, thank you for that. I want to turn to Jay Johnson now, former Homeland Security Secretary. Mr. Secretary, thank you for making time for us today. I want to dive right in here. As you think about these immigration executive actions that we learned about last night, knowing that things Courtney just talked about, assigning troops and the like, would be attaching them to Homeland Security functions that are under the Department of Homeland Security. How enforceable, how actionable are some of these executive orders, and how long might it take to implement some of them?
Well, first, before I was Secretary of Homeland Security, I was the General Counsel of the Department of Defense. Courtney described the legal authorities and the prohibitions well. In general, the U.S. military is not deployed domestically for what we refer to as a posse comitatus, domestic law enforcement. Add to that that our active duty military is not trained for interdicting women and children at our southern border. So there's that. They have been deployed in support. That is not a new concept. In answer to your question, there are a number of these executive orders that raise serious legal issues, and I'm quite sure that there will be lawsuits attached to most, if not all of them. I learned in college, before I even went to law school, that you cannot change a constitutional right, something enshrined in the Constitution, by a mere executive order. You just can't do that. Birthright citizenship has existed since 1868 in the 14th Amendment, which was created to guarantee citizenship to my enslaved ancestors. The amendment says that those born in this country, those naturalized in this country, subject to the jurisdiction thereof, are U.S. citizens. And the word subject to the jurisdiction thereof is generally meant to exclude people, kids born of diplomats in this country. It is also an executive order that basically shuts down asylum. People have a legal right to make a claim for asylum in this country. An executive order that terminates the app appointment program by the prior administration, which appeared to be working. And then on the more practical aspect of all of this, we need to maintain a good, strong relationship with the government of Mexico. A lot of the reasons why the numbers have been down on our southern border for the last 6 months is because the Mexicans have agreed to do a lot to interdict migrants on their southern border, which is only 300 miles long, with Central America. So threatening to send U.S. military to the sovereign country of Mexico, an executive order, remain in Mexico, does not help that relationship, which is key to addressing this problem.
I'm almost out of time here, but I do want to ask you also, we are expecting the president to implement this mass deportation plan that you referenced, in particular targeting these Democrat-run cities. We've heard his borders are telling local officials to get out of the way. We also learned that DHS has rescinded restrictions that kept ICE agents from conducting arrests in schools and churches and other locations like that. Is there anything that states or cities can do to block those sorts of efforts, that sort of movement?
Yes. City councils, state legislatures can enact ordinances or laws that basically forbid local law enforcement from working with ICE. You know, I used to say to my people, including Tom Homan, when he worked at ICE, when I was secretary, do things that are controversial in a particular community. You turbocharge the sanctuary cities movement and make it harder to get at the true public safety threats that we need to interdict, and if they're undocumented, deport. So this could be a huge setback in the wrong direction.
All right, we will leave it there for now. Former Homeland Security Secretary Jay Johnson. Sir, we appreciate your time today.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.